What's up everybody, welcome back to a brand new video on Lexalexus. I'm actually making a video, it's absolutely incredible. Today I'm doing my final championship table prediction. All of the other creators it seems have already done their final table predictions, so I've been a little bit late to the party. But I'm finally going to reveal what I think will happen right at the end of the season. A lot of developments have actually happened since I last did my video last week, so apologies, but I've not really been posting. You'll know later on in this week what direction I'm going to be taking this channel. It'll be coming in the next coming announcement, which will be very, very soon. I do want to try and do some streaming, which I'm just going to be waiting for when football in the EFL is back really for the Championship of the Premier League, because we've got a current international break to deal with at the moment. But for today, in the meantime, I've got time off work and I'm going to use this time to reveal my final Championship final table to you guys. Also guys, make sure you comment your final table predictions in the comments down below. The top 6 and the bottom 3 especially. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who do you think is going to finish in those positions in the comments down below. If you guys like what you see, please smash that like button. It really does help the growth of this channel when you do that. If you've not hit the subscribe button, please also do so. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. We're not too far away from that now, to be honest. So thank you guys for getting me to the current position that I am. I'm really, really grateful. Hitting that subscribe button will push me ever closer to getting 2,000 subs. It'll be amazing if we can get there. And please also share the channel too. All these things really do help as well. Well, it's been a while since I've done this. Without any further ado, let's start reviewing my final championship table predictions. So guys, my championship final table is as follows. Starting at last place in the table is Wigan Athletic for me. I would have given them a little bit of a chance of survival had they not received their 3-point deduction recently due to them failing to pay their staff and players on time. It seems that there's a bit more turbulence going round in Wigan Athletics ownership. It's something we touched upon when they were last in the championship in the 1920 season, and they had real concerns of their championship or even just their own existence in around this stage. And with those 2 seasons consecutively in League One, it did cripple them. So it was amazing to see Wigan Athletic back in the championship. Unfortunately, with decisions from up top, for me, they've not worked out. Liam Richardson, for me, was dismissed way too early. Wigan weren't really, in dire straits when Liam Richardson was sacked. Kolo Touré was just a bizarre choice, which obviously did not work out in the end. And then with Sean Maloney, steadied some things, certainly, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Wigan will go down. And they're on 38 points, so actually would have been on 41 points, but I'm applying their 3-point deduction. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do with Reading's situation as well when we go to discuss them. But in 23rd place, and actually 23rd and 22nd are tied on points. So I'll reveal them very quickly and close to each other. 23rd place for me is Blackpool. They definitely have a result within them. Blackpool, we saw that, but they've been smashing QPR recently by 6 goals to 1. I just have a real concern of more goals being scored when Gary Medine is now out for the season. That's what I believe in terms of his injury news at the moment, which is a blow. And unfortunately, I think just with the games Blackpool have got left, I just think it's too little too late. Blackpool have got a really tough game to end the season. I believe they're away to Norwich as well. So I just think Blackpool have given themselves too much to do, in my opinion, unfortunately, to survive. They could definitely do it. It's not impossible for them. But they're going to have to really start getting a good run of form together right now, actually. And Huddersfield, for me, I think will join them. I think out of the 3 teams currently in the bottom 3, I back Huddersfield more. I think Neil Warnock is just so well experienced at getting teams out from that position. So I would always back it. But once again, I just think it's too much that the teams have got to do to match that same level of consistency as the teams above them, unless some of the teams above start dropping form to the point where they're not even going to pick up a single point from now to the end of the season. Because I do think Blackpool and Huddersfield are capable of getting 44 points, so just under a point per game. And in the current championship table, there are a good strand of teams, that are still trying to get to that 44 point mark. The only teams to have got 44 points at the moment, is up to Reading. And, if Reading's point deduction applies, they're no longer going to get 45 points, aren't they? Unless they pick up 6 further points, which will mean that cancels each other out. So QPR, Rotherham and Cardiff are still yet to get 44 points for me. So I think those 3 teams are still within the mix, and we could throw Reading there if they do get their points deduction applied. But I think the bottom 3 have got too much to do for survive for me, so I'm going to be a bit boring, but I'm going to predict the current bottom 3 to really be the bottom 3 at the end of the season. But if you do see some chops and changes, it will make for a very, very interesting end. Coming in at 23rd place for me, maybe shocking, but maybe not shocking to some, is QPR. I really think QPR are at freefall at the moment, and they are the team I actually fear the most in that bottom 6/7 part of the table, because we've seen Rotherham and Cardiff, Reading and Birmingham, they are all capable of picking up a good result and can actually go on a run. With QPR, they pick up one result, a brilliant win against Watford, and then they follow up that with a 6-1 defeat to Blackpool. There's no consistency there with this QPR team. I do have my concerns. Ainsworth also did manage to get Wickham to survive in the Championship, although that was a bit of a heavy duty task for him. With this QPR side, they are definitely a team that's too good to go down, but they've been shot with confidence. Defensively, they look a shadow of the team that they were at the start of the season, and if they do not get their act together and cannot keep those clean sheets, ultimately they will get dragged into this battle. I think they'll survive at 46, which actually is not too many points that I've got QPR to pick up, from now to the end of the season. But I can realistically see it going that way if the QPR squad does not have this winning mentality, put into place. Ainsworth has got his best chance to get the squad to what he wants it to do with this international break. But there's always the risk that it's just too late and we could see QPR just falling down, and I think they will even fall lower from where they're currently sitting in the table. But I think it will be enough. I think it will be enough for this year, but decisions have got to be made if QPR even show any sorts of level of vulnerability of getting relegated, considering how well they started. Coming in at 20th place in my table is Rotherham. Rotherham have been a team, when I was doing my predictions, who were jumping all around the table, because there was a stage where Rotherham were actually in the bottom 3. And I think them and Huddersfield, out of that bottom 6 that we currently have got the tougher run-ins. So I think Huddersfield's going to find it really, really tricky, but I think so does Rotherham as well. And what will be tricky for them, they can start feeling this complacency, thinking that they are safe. But then when Huddersfield can pick up 1 or 2 wins, all of a sudden Rotherham have now already got to try and match that as well. Huddersfield already had a tough game, away at Millwall at the Den, considering how high they're up the table. It would have been a game that normally people backed Huddersfield to win, considering they had the worst away form before that game and they picked up that win. So we could potentially see a couple of those wins for Huddersfield, and if Rotherham do not have that same grit, they could very likely swap places. And that's the thing for me. I do think Rotherham have got it within them to survive. I think definitely with the points they've amassed they should, but whether they will, it's going to be very, very interesting, because I do think they have got a tough run in now to the end of the season. Coming up next in my table in 19th place, of course, is going to be Cardiff. So Cardiff I do see steadily improving, and I have seen signs that they are now picking up their form under Sabri Nomuchi, and they know exactly what they do to pick up those points on the board. I think they got the timing of the appointment just right. I think had it been 2-3 game weeks later, then Cardiff would have been in a very precarious position. But I do think they timed it right. Nomuchi, fair play to him for how quickly he's managed to get this Cardiff team playing the way that he wants to play. And right now, he's being reaped rewards for it. And it'll be interesting to see if Cardiff do survive. If they back him next year, Lamucci could maybe try and improve things for Cardiff, because it's really been a turbulent couple of years for this Cardiff side. Next team in my table is Reading. So, I've not decided to put Reading's supposed 6-point deduction because it hasn't been initiated yet, and otherwise with Wigan's, their points deduction has already been initiated, but they're on 52 points, apparently, according to my table calculation. With that 6-point deduction, Reading will be joint 21st, so really close to getting pulled into that bottom 3, but just doing enough. And I do think Reading have done enough personally, unless if they have a QPR similar types of form and they don't pick up a single point, and you start seeing the bottom 3 and the rest of the bottom 6 starting to pick up wins. But I do think Paul Ince has got something good there. I think their home form is decent for Reading, and I think that in itself could keep them up in this league, which will mirror their dreadful away forms. So for me, if Reading pick up some really crucial points in their last couple of home games, then I think Reading would do just about enough to survive in this league. Coming up next in my table is Swansea. Swansea is a very weird one because they picked up a win, a very rare win for Swansea in fact, in their last game before the international break. And this is just me assuming that Swansea are just going to continue as they are and being inconsistent when this international break ends. If they have a poor run, they could even fall lower down than that position, to be honest. But things are just not functioning right at the moment for the Swansea team. There's clearly some frustrations there. There have been rumours that Russell Martin's not going to be the manager for Swansea next year. It's definitely been an underwhelming season, considering where a lot of media influencers, such as myself, thought that Swansea could potentially have a shoe-in to try and get into a top 6 place. But obviously, they were nowhere near that. They were flirting with top half at times, but they were nowhere near flirting with top 6. That was definitely something that we definitely overestimated, to put it the best word there. And I think 17th place seems about right, and it'll be a disappointing season for Swansea, considering that they really are taking a couple of steps backwards. Coming up next in my table is Birmingham. So, Birmingham again, similar with Swansea. This is just me judging for what I think could happen after the international break, and that's me assuming that there's not going to be much movement there in this table. There's only 7 games left for most teams. Only 2 to 4 teams actually have 8 games left. So, we really do not have too many games left for these teams, but because of how close the championship is, we can see big change if we're going to see some consistent form. But because of it being so close, but the reason why it's so close is that all the teams in that cluster end of that table are just not having that same level of consistency as we've seen. They'd win one, then they'll lose one in the next time, and then they'll win 2 and then lose 2. This is what we're seeing from many of these teams in that middle part of the table. And I just think there's really not going to be too much change that goes around in that table. I do think Birmingham may edge out Swansea, but right now they are really interchangeable, and there really could be minuscule points separating them. You could see with the points that I've allotted, with Birmingham having 53, it's really going to be tight in that end of the table. Coming at 15th place is Hull City. So Hull City for me, it's like one of the last couple of teams in that lower mid half of the table where I think there'll be a team that are just not quite competing within the conversation getting to the high top half, or within the teams just missing out on the top 6. I think Hull can pick up some really good results. They've got a couple of really good games coming up, Hull City, but they've also got some tough games as well. So naturally, I think they can win a couple, but then lose a couple as well. With that inconsistency thing that I'm talking about here, means that I just don't think there's going to be a lot of movement in that championship table, and that is really what I'm leading at for many of these teams' positions. I think Hull 15th though would be actually a really good position, considering where they were last year and how they started this season, which was an absolute travesty for the way they started this season. Coming in at 14th place for me is Bristol City. Bristol City definitely are capable of getting into the top half. I just think the teams above them are going to showing a little bit more promising signs of more consistency. And obviously Bristol City losing out their last game against Swansea City has not given me too much confidence that they're potentially going to be rising up the table, especially in those teams in that portion of the table there. We call it teams on the beach, where we see teams kind of slipping away their form and being inconsistent with it. And I think that is what we're going to see. So keeping this straight as same theme of teams just being inconsistent, but not consistent enough to rise up the table that much, I'm putting Bristol City in 14th. 13th place in my table for me is Stoke City. Stoke has surprised me. They've done a mini U-turn for what they were doing in like 10 game weeks ago, where they were actually really starting to get pulled into the relegation talk. But Alex Neil and Stoke have now started to improve their consistency, and I think that can be carried on to the end of the season. So because Stoke are currently in that cluster of teams where if they're not consistent, they'll stay where they are, I think Stoke can be the best out of those teams in terms of consistency, which is weird for me to say because Stoke have traditionally been very inconsistent in the Championship. But it feels like Alex Neil is now starting to take things and get things moving nicely. It's just going to be interesting to see if he can continue that onto next year, if he can even get the likes of Dwight Gale again and to potentially reinstate the confidence that he's had in this year to try doing a full season, which would actually give Stoke City a good chance to actually rise up the table a little bit. So some definitely interesting developments going on with Stoke. Coming up in terms of my top half teams, coming in at 12th place is Preston North End. So for me, I think Preston will be bang slap in the middle. Their home form's not been great. Their away form has actually been quite decent, Preston. So I do think if we merge those two forms together, we should see a team right in the middle of the pack, and hence why I put Preston in that position. I put them to actually get over the 60-point mark, and I think they are consistent enough for it. I think, 66 points is definitely achievable for this Preston team. It's really going to be down to if they can actually start getting some form together, then they can potentially start climbing to the top 10s. But for me, I think they'll just miss out and they'll get 12th place. Now we're getting into the teams that were definitely talked about for potentially getting to the top 6 a couple of game weeks ago. So, 11th place for me is Sunderland. This is really just down to what they've got to handle with their injury situation. They are able to pick up some really good wins and results, but I do think having a thinner squad than what they had in their peak of momentum right at the start of the season and when Mowbray take over, I think that's definitely going to halt Sunderland's progress, and it could see them slightly slide down the table. But I think 11th, considering of it being a debut season, or a returning season, I should correct myself, for Sunderland, would be a really, really good achievement for them. Coming into 10th place for me, maybe the shock of the video, but Watford with Chris Wilder, for me, I think are actually going to stay 10th place. So this is really down for me where I don't think Chris Wilder has got enough time to have this traditional Chris Wilder promotion form, run going for Watford. And there's no way Watford will be promoted. There's no way Watford will get into that top 2 now. The gap is too extravagant. The best thing that they can hope for is top 6. And unfortunately, I just think they're not going to be consistent enough in that end part of the season. That's my opinion. I could be wrong on it. I think definitely the top 10 has been the trickiest part for me to predict, because you can definitely see Watford, West Brom, you can see Coventry, Norwich, Millwall, Luton, all these teams entering the conversation of getting into the top 6, and it is really going to be down to consistency. But I am predicting a parachute payment team to finish in 10th place. Shocking, isn't it? Coming into 9th place, which will probably shock you just as much, is West Brom. So 2 parachute payment teams in a row. West Brom do have a game in hand with all the other teams, fighting just outside of the top 6. But despite having that game in hand, a lot of things still need to go West Brom's way to get into that top 6. It is quite a gap that they need to try and breach, and they definitely are going to have to hope for a bit of a collapse with Blackburn, Luton and Millwall right now, who currently occupy their places in the top 6. We can definitely agree that Middlesbrough, Sheffield United and Burnley have claimed their places in the top 3, depending what order I'll reveal later on. But those final other playoff places, still a little bit open. And to be fair, Luton have actually got themselves a little bit more comfortable in that position as well. So it's definitely Millwall and Blackburn that the chasing parachute payment teams are going to be sniffing out on. 8th place for me is yet another parachute payment team in Norwich. So yeah, Watford, West Brom, Norwich, probably the 3 favourites to get into the top 6 based on their squads. For me, I think they'll miss out. I really think they'll miss out. I've not been convinced with either 3 of those teams at keeping consistency. Norwich at times have looked sensational, but at times they've defended like a League 2 team. And that's the issue. The consistency is not there, and the ruthlessness is not there with those 3 teams either. I think whilst they can have the wow factor at times, if they cannot round those last 7 or 8 games with West Brom at least, to try and get most of them into wins and to get into the top 6, then unfortunately for them, they will stay where they are, which is outside of the top 6 for me. So I'm sounding pretty harsh on them, but I've not been impressed with 3 of those teams. And in a way, it would feel like a bit of a cheat code if they do get into the top 6 in the end, because ultimately, I don't think they performed well enough and consistent enough to deserve it, in my opinion. 7th place in the table was really hard. It really was switching between 7 and 6. A lot of my table calculations going on week. But just missing out by 1 point for me is Coventry. Coventry, actually, for me, in terms of all the other teams in that region of the table, have the nicest run of games left, in my opinion. And I really do think Coventry can be a wild card and get into the top 6. It would be nice to see them with him being a non-parachute payment team getting into the top 6. I just think that if there's a couple of suspensions going in, because we do see a lot of players for likes of Hamer sometimes getting suspended for losing their heads, and if we do get 1 too many injuries for Coventry, they could potentially struggle with that as well. If Gyökeres keeps up his goal scoring form though, you do never know. I do think Coventry are definitely a team that's been slept on by many predictors, and I'm definitely giving them the respect that they definitely should be considered to be in the top 6. For me, I just do not quite see it. It's really close, but right now I think Blackburn, who are predicting in 6th, might slightly edge them. Now, I think Blackburn's games aren't too bad either, but Blackburn's hardest games are playing against the teams around them. I know they've got to face Millwall at the Den in the final game of the season. That could be a crucial 6-pointer when it comes to the top 6. But the other times where they're at home, they're facing teams around them. They've got Coventry to face at home, and they've got Luton Town to face at home. So for me, I think the toughest games for Blackburn being at home is actually an advantage for them, because I do think their home form, Blackburn, is considerably better than their away form. And I think whilst the other teams chasing them have got tough home but tough away games too, I think that might give Blackburn just enough breathing space to hold out into that top 6 place. And I'm not seeing too many people, back Blackburn to get into that position. And for me, I feel like Blackburn at times have been really good. I think a bit similar to Norwich at times, they could show that inconsistency. But one thing I really do like about them is how clinical they are. And I do think it's a very important strength that they've got. And I'm actually going to back that Blackburn will get into that top 6 place. 5th place for me is Millwall. I think Millwall will start cementing their place in the top 6 very soon. I do think they've got an alright run in, a bit tougher than Blackburn. But I do think, in my opinion, that Millwall will start getting that experience that Gary Rowett knows to keep teams into the top 6, where he did it with Derby at least. And I think Millwall will do just about enough. I don't think they'll drop out. I know a bit of a concerning result against Huddersfield, but I'm putting that down as a blip. I think Millwall will stay in that position. And now, then it goes into the top 4, where it practically is going to stay the same, unfortunately. And I'm going to be very boring about that. So 4th place, Luton Town for me. And they're still picking up so many points, Luton Town, within my predictions. 78 points. Maybe that's a little bit under for what Luton should be able to be accomplished. But 4th place is where I think they'll finish. 3rd place, which is what you're waiting for, I think it will be Middlesbrough. I think whilst Middlesbrough definitely have the momentum to overtake Sheffield United, I think Sheffield United have got that experience, and I do think Sheffield United will just about be able to hold it together. where I think Sheffield United would be on 90 points at the end of the season. And then in first with 107 points is Burnley. I do think Burnley have got a good chance of breaking the points record, but looking at the running, it is a very, very difficult feat that they are going to have to do to achieve that, really. Because the maximum points that they can get now, if I do the maths quickly, is 110 points. So there's really little margin for error. That's the equivalent of 2 of their last 7 games being draws. So if they draw their last 2 games, they'll get onto 106 points, which matches Reading. 1 defeat will put them 107, but it means they'll have to win all their remaining games to stay that record. So we should put some respect on Reading's name for that incredible points record. And considering how Burnley have really been kicking butt all season, it's going to be difficult for them to get to that points record, but I definitely feel that they've got their eyes fixed onto it. So for me, that is what the championship table is going to be. And ultimately, it's not too much change, you know, because right now I don't think we've got many games left. I think unless one team pulls on either like 6 defeats in a row or 6 wins in a row, I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes in that table. So ultimately, on the left hand side of the screen, guys, is my final championship table for this season. Do you agree with me? Are there things that you don't agree with me? Let me know of your table predictions as well in the comments down below. So that will wrap it up today for my table predictions. If you guys enjoyed what you saw and you want to see more videos from me, please give the video a like. It does really help the growth of this channel. Please do hit the subscribe button if you've not done so. It really helps the growth of this channel. And please share the channel as well, because all these things really do help too. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. It's good to be back. Take care, everyone.